All right, so who are our students? They are adult learners. The students that we have in our program are not the traditional GW graduate student, the 22 to 26 or 28-year-old. These are folks who have probably been away from school for a while. And it's not an exaggeration to say that there was a certain amount of fear and trepidation on the part of the student. If they've been away from school for 5, 10, 15 years or longer, and they're coming back into a graduate program in a format that wasn't exactly part of their skill set when they were in school, we have some catching up to do. So one of the ways we do that is we have an orientation that we provide every one of our students when they come in for the first of our classes, which is a 4-day on-site class. Patricia McTaggart in the Department of Health Policy teaches that for us. It's the intersection of health policy and health IT, and she just does a spectacular job. That first face-to-face class is great, but the first half of that first day is around how do you become an effective online learner. Another thing we've noted is that their computing skills vary. Some of them are pretty sharp, know their way around Firefox and around other browsers. Others, not so much. We had one student at the beginning of this term call up and tell us, well, no, she doesn't have a computer of her own, and the library that she uses for access to the internet is closed on Sundays. That presents a bit of a problem. And so we emphasize to our students, you need to have a computer, whether it's a desktop or a laptop, and you need regular online access. Now, if you could come here and use the Himmelfarb Library, that's terrific. But it's better if you've got your own machine. Our students probably have never taken an online class before. This is their first experience, and 7 of the 9 classes are online. We also have discovered that, particularly for our working adults, these classes take time. Think about the classes you teach. And when the expectations you set up for persons who are taking a face-to-face class with you, we estimate that, what's the estimate for a 2-credit and 3-credit?
10 to 12 hours for a 2-credit class per week and about 14 to 15 hours for a 3-credit class.
That's just for the student. And if they're already working 40, 50, 60 hours a week or more, the students have got to get really good at time management. And we've emphasized that right from the get-go. At the same time, we've had 1 or 2 students in the program. We got one in particular who called and wanted to know if it would be okay if they missed 2 weeks out of the class because he and his family were going on a sailing trip up to the Puget Sound off of Seattle and would not have internet access during that time. Our response was, people can make their own choices. You're an adult, but it's probably not going to facilitate your learning. All of our students have at least a bachelor's degree. And again, as we suggested, it's designed to help people move into the healthcare workforce. So what should these courses offer? What should we be able to do? First of all, we need to get people started as an e-learner. We needed to take people by the hand and show them how to learn effectively online. We need to come up with a methodology, not just for students, but for the faculty, to help guide them through the process. And how does a student become an effective e-learner, and how does a faculty member become an effective e-instructor? We designed the courses in such a way, and I should back up and say that we made the decision during the development of the grant that we would not teach in 14-week semesters. Using the model that was developed by the School of Business and understanding the constraints of our own registrar's office, we decided that we would offer these classes in 7-week blocks. So we would do an entire course in 7 weeks rather than 14. So
One course at a time.
one course at a time. So one course, instead of being, would be essentially compressed into half the time. That required courses to be flexible. It required instructors to be a little less rigid in the way in which they teach, and to think very carefully about what were the really critical elements within their courses. It required classes that would be taught over a week-long period and would be available for download and for viewing anytime during that week. It required asynchronous access to course materials, to readings, to videos. It required activities, discussion groups, online conversations that would be accessible throughout the week. It requires a different way of thinking for both the students as well as the faculty. Okay, well, let's turn to Andy and move into some of the things that we need to do to help the faculty.
Sure. Well, in going in to designing all these courses for the HIT program, we had faculty from 3 different departments on campus. It wasn't just the School of Public Health. We also had the engineering school and their computer science program, and we also had the business school and our MIS program. All those faculty have different experience with online teaching, but for the most part, they have zero experience coming into teaching the HIT program. So we took into consideration that they hadn't taught online previously, that they might not be aware of the best practices for developing an online course. They might be unsure how to connect and really engage with their students in an online course and teaching online. A common pitfall that we've seen with a lot of first-time e-teachers is they try to take their stand-up course that's normally not very well organized, and they attempt to deliver it in that loose format online. That doesn't always work so well, so we try to introduce a more structured format using this tool, Course Organizer, that we're looking at in just a little bit. Using technology for faculty members is sometimes a challenge, especially if they haven't taught online previously, and they might also need some training in use of Blackboard and content creation tools. So to support these faculty and their needs, we created a course design process that offered a tech-free way to design the individual sessions of your course. A tech-free way to design the sessions of your course using just Microsoft Word, using this document, the Course Organizer. We wanted to create a clear and effective path to designing the individual sessions of the course, starting with developing good session-level objectives for each weekly session, and then making sure that all of the content and all of the assessments in the course align for each individual session. We wanted to make sure that we had a best practice-based course development path leading up to the online release of the course. And we'll be in just a little bit at a rubric called the Quality Matters rubric. It's a program that we just subscribed to here at GW, having to do with best practices for the creation of an online course in Blackboard. We wanted to make sure that there was a collaborative instructional design process between myself, the other instructional designer that was originally on the project as well, Lori Posey from the nursing school, making sure we work with faculty members to develop their sessions, and then we wanted to provide an ongoing course quality improvement process for those faculty members. And we do that by sitting down with that Quality Matters rubric at the end of the first time that the faculty member teaches, and go through the individual points in the course, and then offer some hopefully helpful suggestions for the next offering.
So faculty get this document, they spend some time kind of filling all the, and then they meet with you or?
Generally with me. What we usually do is we sit down and we talk about the steps and stages that they'll need to go through to start designing their course and then developing it and then creating the content. and then getting the course up online, and then finally teaching. And then we meet regularly, starting with looking at this course organizer 2 or 3 times and going back and refocusing and retooling to make sure that each session aligns well. And then from there, we start looking at the technology tools, creating content, and then eventually moving everything from the course online.
So it really is an iterative process.
It is.
I have to say, from a faculty member's point of view, it was helpful to have a structure to think about an online class, because you do have your regular class, and there is this assumption that, you know, I'll just record my lectures, put it up there, and we're done. But but there is a thinking process through, you know, what does it mean to compress your schedule, first of all. But second of all, what material works well that you do in class that translates online, versus what doesn't translate so well that you have to probably find some other kind of substitute to deliver that material. And I think what Andy, as well as Lori told you when the first time I went around did this, they were very helpful in creating a structured way to think about that, and that's what a lot of these documents are about, is creating some sort of a pathway. And it might feel like a lot of things right there, but it's designed in a way that you have, I think, a sheet for each week of your course. You at least have 7 documents, 7 pieces of paper there. I think what's great is this push towards taking in best practices that already exist out there. And we're not trying to recreate the wheel per se, but we're trying to package it in a way that works best for a program like ours. But there are a lot of great best practices that exist to pull from, which Andy does a good job bringing in.
One of the other points I wanted to bring up too is once we're done with designing the course on paper, this course organizer tool actually maps directly to the template that we use for the courses in Blackboard. That has 2 benefits. One, for the faculty member, what they're doing inside Microsoft Word translates directly into what the course will actually look like. And for students, that means that all of their courses follow the same format, use the same navigation, so students aren't forced to relearn how to use their courses. And in a 7-week rapid learning environment like we have, that's actually a pretty important thing.
Actually, there's some level of simplification for the students' part, that we try to make sure due dates are at the same time for course assignments, so everyone knows what that one date is, so they don't have to fuss around and ask you, what day is the homework due? And I think we try to slot our maybe synchronous discussions where we're talking online at the same time in a way that doesn't conflict with other classes too. So there's a dialogue that has to happen between the different professors. That happens probably more so than sometimes than our on-campus classes.
I agree.
Anyone have any questions on this before we move on?
Yeah, I wonder if you could share with us some of the rigorous evaluations and best practices that have been done, so we can learn from them, and not only domestic IT, but also working in overseas environments.
We'll certainly share with you the work we've done. I don't know that we have a lot of examples from international context, but we can certainly work to find them. You know, I think Bianca's point, though, is particularly important, and that is there is a high level of conversation that has to occur between and among all of the faculty that are teaching in the program. Because of this 7-week time structure requires us to not stumble over one another. I don't want to offer a synchronous chat room at the same time that another professor in that same class, in a different class, is teaching it. So the honest to goodness truth is that we talk with one another more about the overall structure and activities associated with our classes in this format than I think I have with my face-to-face classes. And I know that, okay, my time is Tuesdays from 4:10 to 6, and it's basically independent of everybody else.
Well, you probably have your assignments due on
And everybody's assignments are due at the same time.
My students will tell me when your assignments are
Of
due,
course.
versus a different conversation where, as a faculty, we decide when the assignments will be due. Just to streamline, I think, the amount of online back and forth that you get just about the administrative part. I think the great thing about this design is it tries to limit the, or at least limit, I guess, the administrative burden that comes along with probably with an online class. so that you're not dealing with more of the type of administrative burden online than you would in an on-campus class.
I have just one question, since you're talking about,
Could you speak up a little bit?
Sorry,
So this is
yeah.
being recorded.
My question is about the assignments being due on the same time for, say, multiple courses. Do you think the students feel comfortable? Because normally, as a student, you tend to work towards the end of the time period. And if multiple assignments are being submitted, I'm sure, especially those who are working 40, 50 hours a week, I don't know whether they will be able to actually just,
Roland, do you want to
give,
comment on that?
do a justice to the assignment itself.
Roland now, who teaches our quality class, actually has a comment on that.
Yes, so the first time I taught this course online, we were still working out the kinks, and I wasn't aware of, we had a similar deadline, students were all in different time zones, and so I had set it at Sundays at noon as my deadline. And didn't take into consideration the fact that other people had Sunday at midnight, Sunday at 8, and so it was more of a frustration, and students were saying, you can't give us all these different times, and is it Eastern, or is it Central, or what are you doing?
Hawaiian.
Yes, and so it finally, we got, of the 7 weeks, the third week, I was like, scrap that due date, Sunday at midnight, you get them in, and they work with that, and they appreciate that consistency of, all right, I have all weekend to work, and at midnight on Sunday, I better hit submit.
Well, and there's also different things that professors do in terms of their assignments. Not everyone has a weekly assignment
Right.
due. Not everyone has, they might have only one thing at the end of the 7-week period. So every professor has a different set of assignments that then don't necessarily crunch the students all at once. Now, we don't have that kind of discussion of, well, do I have a weekly problem set
Right.
versus you having a paper at the end, but so far there doesn't seem to be a problem that I've encountered so far.
Can you talk a little bit about how you run your discussions? Are those
We
blogs, are they really?
we will get
long?
into that specifically, yeah. And we will actually show you two of the classes, I believe. A class that's more quantitative in nature and one that's more qualitative. We'll demonstrate